pieces of property, some of them 20, 40 acres. And we had probably one of the smallest parcels at 7, but still they wanted to charge our lane like people were, actually there were houses on it and there weren't. So and I was telling Bill that I've heard that there are entities that are now being hired by the state, by local governments and that, to fight people objecting to the property tax. It used to be if you objected to what you were paying, they'd usually, okay, we'll give you, we'll cut it back a little, we'll give you a break, whatever. They're not doing that anymore. And part of it may just be because they don't want to give you any tax money back. But
it's true.
There's all kinds of bizarre things going on. Well, anyway, it's 9:05. We can actually start this formally.
Okay.
You want to introduce everybody, Bill?
Okay. My guest today is Tammy Murphy from Real Homes to Love Realty. And now you're located in Centerville?
My office is in Centerville, yes.
Okay. And so, I'm not sure, Tammy, as far as you are working for the elimination of property tax in the state of Ohio.
Well,
or to get an amendment put on the Constitution.
Right. So I'm a realtor. So I've been in real estate for 24 plus years. Okay. So I have experience with the process of buying and selling properties, helping people to do all the things they want to do with their home. But most importantly, I serve as an advocate for people's homeownership rights. And that is how this has really come to fruition. There's a fly that's going to keep on with me, isn't there?
Joe's going to get his bow and arrow out.
When I'm swatting, it's not because I really don't, I'm using my hands that much.
Bring your fly swatter?
I did not, sorry.
Well, that fly, they say they only live like, 30 days or what? That fly's lived here for about 6 months, I think.
It hasn't gotten cold enough to do the job.
Unless Mike DeWine has a drone in here.
But this property tax situation, it has kind of escalated to the point where in real estate we talk about, well, prices have gone up and people were pushing back and maybe it was too costly for them to get into buying a home, right? And then you had the high interest rates. All of a sudden they went from 3 to 7 to 8%, and people were like, well, wait a minute, maybe I can't really afford to buy houses. The reality is people still need to buy and sell houses, right? There comes a time when you just have to do it, you bite the bullet and you make it happen. Well, we now have seen we still have the higher prices, we still have the higher interest rates, but this escalation of property taxes is the thing that has stopped a lot of people. And here is the reality of it, is that it is across all demographics. It's affecting everybody. It's affecting long-term holders of the property, family lines, they've had it in the years for decades. It's affecting new buyers. So somebody coming in who does all of their due diligence, they do their homework, they get qualified for a loan, they save their money, they work hard, they pay it off. But over the years, these property taxes have just continued to escalate. That's the issue that I have, is that I can't support when it feels like the system isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So they want to say, well, property taxes fluctuate because of value. Well, baloney. I did catch myself since we're live. Baloney, because I went back to research, and when the market absolutely bottomed out in our communities, 2008 to 2012, there was not an extensive relief in property taxes. My property taxes, as a matter of fact, have gone up every year since day one. And so that proves to me that their system is geared to always collect money. And we have allowed this to go on. So property taxes have been going on in Ohio since day one, right? And a little here and a little there, and what they don't tell you is that some of these levies are forever levies. Found this out the hard way. Before my home was even constructed, when I look on my tax distribution, the levy distribution on it, it has property taxes for the school board for before my home was built. Now I called, I wasn't the owner, but I called and I said, what is going on with this? Oh, that's considered a forever tax. And so it will go on retroactive to any of the homes. And I am like, what in the world? Where did we sign up for this? We, the people, did not sign up for this. And so this is why. You can see I'm already animated and we're here, not even 5 minutes into this conversation. But that's the problem. It's the reality of that we're continuing to pay more and more and more, and I don't get to control my budget anymore. I now have to adjust my living, my medical or my health or my groceries. I cut back on all of my things because I have a higher property tax bill.
Because you're a slave to the state.
That's ridiculous.
Right.
That is not what we signed up for. And that is why the people are really reaching out, and I joined on, to eliminate property taxes because it makes sense. I need to speak to that.
Now, this is called Axe Ohio Tax. Is that if people are looking for a website or information, that's where I found the petitions and went there. You had sent that to me.
Right.
And so that's what I was trying to get to the people, is there's a website that they can go to find out more information, and if they want to get involved.
Correct. And so it started with Citizens for Property Tax Reform. So Citizens for Property Tax Reform is how it started.
Right.
That's who generated the original petition. And then Axe Ohio Tax, so it's AXOHTAX.com, is where they have the list of people who are willing to do the petition signings. And there wasn't anybody at the time, this was back in July, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I'm in Montgomery County, which happens to be so close to all of these other surrounding counties that I can do this. And so I just signed up to be a petition collector.
Right.
It's not a big deal. Anybody can do it.
No, it's not.
We can't do it online. It has to be in person, right? And that's the stipulation. The in-person petition signing has to take place.
And they have to be voters.
They have to be registered to vote, correct.
And so I'm going to let Tammy get back into this. Joe's over here. Joe Holdren's joining me here. We've, of course, did the Razor's Edge for many years down here before I decided to go and retire. So, but,
And leave us.
Get out of Dodge.
But, Tammy, this is something that as soon as I saw you on, and you've got a bunch of videos on YouTube. So if you want to see more of Tammy's comments on this after today, go to YouTube, look it up.
Real Homes to Love channel is there, and we're just really, and we get a lot of questions, and I'm telling you, I've been in this business for a long time, and I've heard stories, and I've been involved trying to help people in bad situations to get out of it, right? But this is heartbreaking to an extent that I don't think our county officials understand how everybody is impacted by this. People who are losing their homes in a matter of this without going through a court process like they would if they were delinquent on their mortgage. How do you just take the home? And you're taking the value of an asset that isn't equal to the property tax delinquency.
Right.
So for $8,000, I'm going to lose my family home? Are you kidding me?
Especially after you've paid it off, right?
Especially after you've paid it off. Right. There is just no way that should be legal. And I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to preface that. I am not an attorney. I don't have any legal rights to say anything about right or wrong. I don't have the right to say what's legal or not legal, right? But I can give you my opinion. As somebody who's been in this business, I'm very well aware of what the process is, and that's where it's not correct.
Well, let's jump into some of the stuff that I had sent you.
Okay.
One of the things that people don't know, I did, I know you do, people that are kind of politically aware know that this has been ruled unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court, correct?
Well,
property tax.
So that's
funding schools.
It's a technicality, yes.
Okay.
So it is regarding the school's funding that it's unconstitutional. That was ruled in 1997.
Oh, was that far? I thought it was
1997 was when that ruling took place.
Okay.
And what happened is because it was how the schools were being funded.
Okay.
We don't know if there was officially a change. However, there has been a change. Now, this is not a constitutional change for our Ohio Constitution, but we know that when they start talking about these 20 mil levies, that's the additional funds to go to the school. So I think that's their workaround, because our Constitution says that our property taxes are not to exceed 10 mil. So if our Constitution says 10 mil, and I'm doing all the math, and why am I having to pay all of this extra?
The additional.
It's the extra that they've added. They codified this. They didn't change the law. They just put a caveat in there. And I think that's what we need to do, is we need to start calling them out on how are you doing this? How is this right? How is it legal? But I'm not an attorney, so I can't say that it's illegal, right?
Yep. So I know one of the questions has been, and I know we talked briefly about this, that, well, how come that the Ohio General Assembly hasn't done something about this? And I said, well, there are some things going on, but all of them are kind of skirting around the main issue.
Yeah.
And so why don't you talk about that, is what Mike DeWine, I know, and I sent the one to you. The one proposal was to, well, we're going to say if you're over 60, you don't have to pay property tax. But then I'm finding out that they're going to backload the tax when you sell it, and it's going to go to the next owner.
Well,
So-
and this is very important because we are getting ready to do a vote, right? November is coming up, and there are levies, there are decisions that need to be made, there are local positions that are being filled, right? And I want to encourage everybody to absolutely do their homework before you go in to vote, because the wording on the ballot is very specific and it's confusing. It's designed to be confusing. Now, they've had bills to say we need to clean up our language, and it needs to be yes means yes and no means no, instead of reversing that.
Right.
I don't know that we've seen that actually happen for that reason.
Right.
Because they tell us one thing, that this is, and that sounds like what we want, but then in reality, there's a back door, and that back door creates a bigger problem than the other way. So we have been talking about property taxes and doing something to fix them for a year. For years,
Well,
right?
30 years probably, close to it.
Yeah, I would say decades, but honestly, it's been the focus of our association of realtors to say, hey, we need to be lobbying for this because this is affecting home ownership rights. And so when we start seeing that, we go in and we try to have the conversations. That conversation, and they kick the can down the road. So one side of the House will vote on it, the Senate will vote on it, or the House votes on it, but they don't get together, right? I don't know if they're ever in session at the same time. I mean, it must be great to have that kind of a job. But the reality is that they've tried to do something.
Right.
They've passed things, but then never enacted it. And I'm like, how is this even possible? So all the things that they could have done were temporary fixes. They were Band-Aids.
Right.
All of the counties would make a recommendation, send it to the House to get it voted on, and then, okay, well, I've got partisan collection here, we'll do this, but then it doesn't go any further. So they never resolved it, which is why it really was a sticking point when there were 4 items that were included on our state budget this year that Governor DeWine vetoed. He made an unnecessary call to himself that I'm deliberately vetoing these items specific to property taxes. Now he says, oh, well, I want to get a special group in there to look at it. That special group and their report is baloney. I'm just going to use that word today. It's unrealistic, right? They try to give a good answer, but then they have that backdoor approach. And so when I did my review of that, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, can you just say, if our homestead exemption is basically the first $28,000 that is not taxed, that's a drop in the bucket for most people. When you're talking about properties that have gone from, let's call it from a $50,000 value to a $200,000 value. Well, if there's a 4-time there, why isn't there a 4-time with your homestead exemption? I don't know. It seems like some easy answers are out there, and they just have avoided it.
Right.
It's like if it's an easy answer, it's wrong. But the fact is if we raised our homestead exemption, that gives people the ability to continue to stay there, right? If my property taxes are now not $28,000 but $100,000, that helps offset some of that market growth, right? And to me, that makes a little bit of sense.
Sure.
It's not the full answer. And here's the thing. Since they have kicked this can down the road for so many years, we aren't just going to accept a little piecemeal answer. We want actual change. We want to know that nobody is going to lose their home because of property taxes. If I want to sell my home, I should be able to sell my home and make some money, pay off the debts, and do what I need to do. But I should never be able to lose my home over $8,000 or $10,000 or $30,000 or whatever it is,
Right.
because I've paid it off, I've done my due diligence, and you're telling me my property taxes take my home.
Right.
If it takes my home, then give me back my $150,000. Pay off the debt, but give me my balance. And
Right.
that's not what they're doing.
Right, right. Well, and that kind of leads into this question is why we're going for a constitutional amendment opposed to relying on our legislators to go in and solve this. So why don't you talk about the constitutional amendment aspect to this?
Right. Well, and obviously our legislators have shown us that we can't trust them to solve the problem, right? They have fouled it up for years. And if there were anybody who was really stepping forward to say, here's how we can address this situation, here's what we need to do, then maybe we have a chance. But it's so 88 counties in Ohio, that means there's 88 auditors that are in the mix of this, right? But the state is who controls how property tax is allowed. So the state sets the rules, and then your municipalities have to see the process. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to account for it and all of that. So that's why it requires a constitutional change. Our Constitution is limited, and it says 10 mil. So if they change that, unless it's voted on, that's how they use the levies. And so if we want to say, no, there's a hard end to this, we have no more property tax to personal home residences, because they're still going to charge businesses, they're going to still charge investment properties, all of that. But at least give home ownership the opportunity to maybe not have property taxes, then that has to be a constitutional change.
And that's an important thing, because I know a lot of people have cried the blues about, well, what are we going to do about the schools? What are we going to do about safety services? What are we going to do, well, they said, what about business? And this one particular person was talking about, well, no one's going to want to come to Ohio if we do this, because I said, well, why? I mean, what? And I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, but they led into the sales tax thing and said, well, that's going to chase everybody away. But why don't you go ahead and talk about that with some of the fears that are being projected? And you talked about the county auditors. One county auditor says, well, what are we going to do? We won't have any money if we don't do this. And my one friend who was talking to this guy said, well, you've had 30-some years to figure this out.
Right. Well, and longer in most cases.
Yeah.
So the reality is that here's the thing. When this really started, before it became a crisis, and I'm calling it a crisis now because when I hear the number of people who are in this situation about to lose their home over their property tax, that's a serious situation, right? I'm a single person in my real estate company, and I'm getting this kind of contact. That means it's extrapolated, and it's a bigger issue. And this is what is really upsetting, that our legislators are failing to see how much of an impact this is. So, let me go back to the question.
Do we have a decision?
It's getting hot in here, huh? So, I keep looking. I try to get you into this conversation. It is so. It's really frustrating for the process, because this isn't what it's supposed to be about. And so when people will say, okay, well, I can't afford the property taxes in Montgomery County, so I'm going to sell my house here and I'm going to move to Warren County. I've had a number of people do this. Guess what? When Warren County caught up, because they don't all do it at the same time, Warren County taxes then became higher, and they're like, well, I shouldn't have moved. You can't move to solve the problem, right? And so someone who's saying, well, everybody will leave Ohio, people are leaving Ohio now. So we have Florida, Texas, and Ohio, the three big states that are right now talking about property tax relief. The first one to actually abolish property taxes is going to get an influx of people, because everybody's going to say, you know what, that's enough of a difference for me to go there.
Sure.
They do it for the weather.
Right.
They've done it for income tax purposes.
That's right.
So what makes you think that they're not going to go because of property taxes? This is the lack of oversight and fiduciary responsibility that our legislators, our auditors, they're failing, because they should be seeing, if we continue to overcharge and don't give any relief to our homeowners, one, they're not going to fix up their properties because it makes it look like there's improvement. Two, they're not going to be able to afford it, so they're going to have to sell, and then what? You just think somebody's going to come in here? This has taken such a turn that people are looking at property taxes. So now it is in the equation,
Right.
and you have to qualify for your house to buy it unless you're paying cash. If you're getting a loan, you're qualified to buy that house at that point based on the purchase price, based on your income, and based on the property taxes. So if the property taxes are part of that initial equation to qualify for the home, how dare they go back and then change that and escalate it to where I can't afford it?
Right.
Because that's not fair.
Right.
You've just cost me out of my home, and it wasn't at my doing, it's at your doing. So give me the numbers. If you want to talk budgets and what money you actually need, they
Yeah.
need to be giving us those numbers. Because the report was there's $10.5 billion in excess in our school boards.
Yeah, I have heard that.
So if there's excess money, you need to be accounting for that. Why wasn't that returned to us? If I overpay my income tax, IRS will send me a check.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be little, but at least I will get something back.
Right.
Or the state of Ohio will send me my money back. We've never gotten money back from our county auditors for property taxes, for overpayment of the levies, for anything. They collect the money, they take the money, they have no accounting to us, and then they want more. That's what's broken.
You know, and it's interesting when people want to point to people not wanting to come to Ohio or won't come to Ohio. I happen to know a former Cleveland Brown that played back in the 80s. Could have moved to California, could have moved to a lot of different New York, wherever the cosmopolitan areas were. He said to me, he said, even professional athletes look at the affordability of where you're at. And he said, my dollar goes farther in Cleveland, Ohio, than it goes if I lived in Los Angeles or
sure.
New York.
Yeah.
And he said, so that's why you see a lot of professional athletes, and we don't know this, but he said there's a lot of professional athletes that play sports in Ohio that don't leave the state because it's more affordable to live here. And, you know, these people are making millions of dollars. They're
Sure.
not making $60,000 or $100,000 a year. These people are making millions, and even they are looking at it and saying this is a better place. But if we don't change the property tax idea, we're going to lose those people too.
Well, and so the thing is that compared to other parts of the country, Ohio is a lower cost of living, right?
Absolutely.
So that's still a true statement, even with the high property taxes. But the problem is that those people who are from here, those of us who were born and raised and had our lands and our properties and all of that, what we have felt is this escalation and nothing coming back. And so while it may be less expensive than if I lived in California, New York, or anywhere else, I live here. And so now you've changed my perspective of my home state because you've continued to take and take and take. Instead of having these conversations, why aren't our auditors having conversations? Well, the odd thing is, they are now. You're hearing about
Yeah,
these stories
because they know what's going
because
on.
we have continued to apply this pressure. Instead of going away when we didn't make the mid-year, when we didn't make the ballot this November, we could just say, okay, we're done, we're giving up. No, we're continuing to get the signatures so that we can be on the May ballot. And the May ballot is really a good timing because that's mid-year. And that means if you haven't been doing your job, we're probably going to vote you out. You deserve to lose that position because you haven't worked for us. You work for us, the people, and you have failed to give us any response. You have failed to give reform. You have failed to give us answers. You're not giving us transparency of the budgets. If you showed us that the schools actually only have this much money in their coffers and that it takes this much money and we're going to have to lose our educators as a result of this, right? Or we're going to have to charge per student. There's going to have to be some kind of a fee. Then we as people can figure out what's right, what we need to do. The fact that we don't get that information and it's every time you turn around there's another levy put on the board. How mismanaged are you that every year you have to ask for more money?
Right.
Why are you not cutting something? And I don't mean cutting the students' benefits. I mean you cutting your overhead. Why are you doing interior decorating? Why are you spending this much on retreats? I mean,
Well,
I could go through it.
Why does some, you know, being a former educator, the question I would have is, why do you have 3 superintendents?
Correct.
Or why do you have 5 principals in a school? And trust me, I understand the discipline thing in schools is an issue, but their salaries are definitely inflated. I mean, I think people would be shocked to see how much money superintendents and principals are getting. And it's the teachers are the ones that get hurt in that process because they're the ones that they're going to go to the bottom, the lowest rung, and take that rung out before they're going to hurt themselves. So I think that's a great point. Is we have to hold these people accountable. We should know if you're going to hire a superintendent, this is what we're hiring them for, and that should be public knowledge before anybody signs on to hiring these people.
Well, and the other thing about that, and I'm an advocate for this across the board, if you don't do your job, you don't get to stay in the position.
Right.
I mean, if you really flub it up in your first year and you have overspent the budget and you have no accounting, you're out. You don't get a 5-year contract. I mean, good grief. Why do we sign up and say somebody gets a lifetime of work out of this?
Right.
You do the job, then yes, I want you to stay there. But if you don't do the job, then you're out.
Yeah. Let's move a little bit into the petition aspect of it. How are we doing so far? You said that we didn't have enough for November, but looking at the numbers where we're going, what do you think by May? Are we going to get that on?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Here is what we're saying is that we're not telling you how many numbers we have. Because that gives them a chance to think how many they have to throw out. So in all fairness, we're going to continue to take signatures through the end of this year.
Okay.
And then that way, January, everything is submitted, everything can be certified. They're going to do their thing, but we are working diligently to have well more than enough, okay? So the big thing is that we have to have at least 44 of our counties, that's half of our counties, have to be represented. And from there, then we have to have that 413,000 number, whatever that is, right? It sounds like it's a lot. It's not. It's not a lot. And it's very easy to get that number when you're talking about something that is affecting everybody.
Right.
I get calls from a lot of counties around, and if they don't have a signing station, I try to figure out how can I get them to sign. Right. I've gone and followed the UPS driver so that he can sign on his route. I've gone into businesses so that all of their workers could sign.
Sure.
I'm in Centerville, which is really easy for a lot of places, people to get there, but I'm off and running all the time. So it's not a problem for me to collect signatures. I can verify that you as a person are presented to me. That's all I have to do. You fill out the form the way that you're registered, and that's that simple. It takes you 30 seconds, maybe a minute.
Matter of fact, I don't know if they can see this, but I've got one here. This is what the petition looks like, and it looks very much like the voting register when you go in to vote.
Yeah, and you're just filling out the one little section. Your name, your address, and then your signature.
Right up here. And you need to sign it the way it appears on your ID, and make sure that you get the date right. Make sure that
you don't abbreviate the street or name.
Right. Keep everything as official as possible, and because they'll throw it out for anything they can get.
Which is why we're going to have more.
Right.
We're going to have more so that we know that they're going to do that. They're going to try to do that. We're going to have more than enough so that they can't say, well, you didn't meet the limit. We have the limit. We're going to be good.
Well, don't you think the problem that we're having is that we're voting people in there that are in there for themselves and not for us?
Of course.
And they're setting their own pay raises. I've never voted for a pay raise for anybody in office.
Well, you don't have to.
They'll take care of that.
So if they need more money,
They just write it in there.
They just write it in and they get more money.
Right.
And that's part of the transparency issue.
It's almost like a little bit of Caesar came over on the Mayflower. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and when we look at that whole thing, I think the thing about this petition drive and being a May election, we know historically that the off-season elections, May and August, tend to don't do as well. Only the people that have a vested interest are the ones.
Right. Well, and so that was, here's the thing. They think they know what they're doing, but we have really figured out what they've been doing, right? Mm-hmm. We get what they're doing with sliding these levies in there when they do, and there's so much on the ballot, and you can't take, people don't take the time to read. They go into the booth and so But that special election that came up in August a couple of years back, right? 2 topics on there, and they were like, nobody's going to show up. We're going to slide this in there. It's going to go exactly the way we want. Well, people lined up, and people showed up, and the votes were taken. What we learned from that is that regardless of what we vote, local municipalities have the upper hand. So this is key. This is why your vote matters when you go in on November,
Right.
is because those local municipality people, if they are not on board, if they do not understand, even though we would vote something in at the state level, the municipalities are going to come back and say, oh, well, now here's what we're going to do. So if you don't think they're scrambling right now trying to figure this out, you're missing the
Right.
real picture that's going on.
Right.
The auditors are starting to come out and they're saying, oh, Lucas County, we have an error. We admit 7,000 people filed for their property tax dispute. It took them a year, but they got through everybody. 4,900 taxes were lowered. 1,400 were admitted by the county as being an error because of their computer system. And I'm saying, well,
Quite a few.
if there were 1,400 that were in error because of the computer system, there were probably more. They're just saying of the 7,000, this is all we looked at. But that opens the door. In my mind, that opens the door that something wasn't right. And if you just admitted that the system failed, then everybody should be able to file and get that report back, right?
Right.
So if they have $4 million that are coming back to them, nobody's gotten any money that I'm aware of. But the promise is that yes, you were overcharged. If they get money back or if their property taxes get lowered, I need to hear and see that to know that it's legit, right? Because at this point, it's kind of odd that Lucas County comes out, somebody else comes out because they're going to give $2 million back to their farmers. And now Butler County is saying they have $50 million they're going to give back to their residents for property taxes. $50 million? Are we going to get checks for that? Or are you just going to lower the property taxes? And if they're willing now to lower the property taxes as a result of this push, they could have done it sooner. And that would have stopped all of this crisis that we have going on. So if one county can admit, we've overcharged you, we were really good stewards of your money, here's your money back, then I think we should be able to tell all of our counties to do the same.
Right.
At least give us the reports, the budgets.
Sure.
Let us see the numbers.
I think the thing that people need to take away from this is, I started getting, after I talked with you, I got some, and you can print these petitions off from the website and go around, take them to church. I went to church and I had 10 people sign right then, as soon as I talked to them about it. This is not a hard sell type of thing. Some people are going to say no, they don't want to do it, but it's an easy thing to do. A couple things though, you cannot sign your own petition.
Correct.
So make sure that if you're going to distribute them, find somebody else and sign their petition so that it doesn't get thrown out of there. And, make sure that you remember to vote in May, because that is what they bank on, is that, well, it's a May election, nobody's going to turn out for this election. And we need to continue to push from this point forward all the way to May and remind all the people that you got to sign, hey, are you going to go out and vote on the first Tuesday of May or whatever the date is on that. So that's an important thing. Other question came up. This guy was a former attorney, and he was asking about double taxation. And he said, you pay taxes when you buy your house. And he said, now you're continuing to pay property taxes. He says, isn't that a form of double taxation? And could there be a class action suit by the citizens of Ohio filed against the state of Ohio on that type of premise?
Well, and if he's an attorney, I would love to have a conversation with him, because that's what I want. I want the attorneys who are out there who realize that this has not been done the way that it's supposed to be done.
Right.
If they've been violating our Constitution and they didn't actually codify that additional 20 mil for the school taxes, how are they working around that? Why wasn't that put to a vote for the people? And if it's illegal, if it's unconstitutional, if it's not right, based on the budget. If they submit a budget and they're allowed to exceed that, why isn't there recourse for that?
Right.
So I think there's lots of reasons and ways that we could question the system. You know, when you buy a house, there's a conveyance fee. There's There's not a specific, we'll call it a property tax. Now there may be if we change this, right? And I'm advocating that if you're going to have to charge me when I buy it, charge me when I sell it, because those are two real numbers.
Right.
But what we have going on in the middle is unrealized gain.
Yeah.
And you're charging me for a false number that it doesn't benefit me in any way. If you say my house is worth $300,000, you don't know that I just put every dime I have in it to just make that final repair that you drove by and said, oh, well, that's much better. Okay, let's give it $300,000. You have no basis for that. I'm in real estate. I can tell you if I put that much money in there.
Right.
Now, could I sell it for it? Then tax me then. But don't tax me in the middle.
Right.
And here's the other thing, you know, and a lot of people have said, I'm concerned about putting a storage shed in my backyard because they're going to raise my property taxes. I've had a number of people who reached out when they put on the new roof that the next year their property taxes went up. Anything that's perceived as this improvement, the county is using as an opportunity to say, okay, we're going to charge you more. That's not the way that's supposed to be.
It's kind of like having a state HOA.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And what do they really want? Do they want us to not take care of the property? Do they want us to have issues? So as a community, we need to understand, if I support my community in everything I do, I'm eating at the groceries, I'm buying groceries, I'm eating at the restaurants, I'm going shopping there, I'm buying my gas there, which is 57 cents a gallon that's going to my roads. So if that isn't sufficient, because I've done quick math, that's a lot of money they collect every single day just from the taxes of the gas. So I think our road system is okay. And there's 15 different levies that are my school levies on my current property. So I have 15 different school board levies that I'm being charged for on my property when I looked at it. I brought it because it's so amazing to me that this distribution of my taxes for my property tax bill, and not everybody's is going to be the same because counties do it differently. Sure. But this is an example, and you may not see the detail on here. It's a solid 2 pages of the property taxes.
Right.
So 40% is broken down to the Centerville schools. And then you've got Washington Township, you've got the fire and EMS, you've got the general funds, you've got the county human services, you've got your school libraries, you've got your community college libraries, and you got your metro parks. By the time they are adding it all up, I'm like, I know I didn't vote on 75 different levies.
Right.
So how is this going on there?
Right. Taxation without representation.
It is really, and that's why we really did start talking about, you know, Boston Tea Party happened for a reason.
Yes.
And it was
People got fed up.
really at a different tax amount than what we're dealing with now. I can't imagine what our original founders and citizens of our country would say, realizing that 40% is going where?
Yeah.
I mean, how much are you getting left?
Yeah, I agree. Vicki Kendall, they're going to put an electric line through our farm, a 200-foot swath. We are not allowed to farm that land.
They still have to pay tax on it.
But they still have to pay taxes.
Which doesn't make any sense.
Right.
No.
That easement should be deducted then from your property
Sure.
if they're taking it.
Or let the electric company pay.
Yeah, if you're
Correct.
gonna put a shed and they're gonna charge you more for that, then how come when you take public domain, take this portion of property, how come that's not deducted from it?
Well, or giving them some benefit of a cash payment for their purchase of the
Yeah,
land.
yeah.
I mean, you know, eminent domain is one thing, but the electric thing is a whole nother topic. We know that Ohio has had issues with, right?
Yeah,
But
a little bit.
our township, our city came through with this proposal, and it was really just a letter in the mail that I got, and this started me thinking that they are doing so many things that we are not aware of.
Sure.
But this position of we have negotiated lower power charges for you
Right, electric
as
bills.
our community, so you get the benefit of it. well, that's not real. You know
No.
how it is, right?
Yeah.
They're getting a cut of the money that's going for the payment
Right,
because my bills haven't gone down. They've actually gone up.
right.
But now the city's getting that. So where does that show up on the budget? Are they reducing our property taxes because now they're getting part of our power bill? There's just so many questions.
Yeah. So another thing that people have talked about, how will we pay for the schools, emergency services, local government? And, you know, my response has been, and one of the candidates for governor here, run for DeWine's position, I had stated that, well, we could put a couple cent sales tax, state sales tax on there, and we would make 4 times more money than what we're making right now. And
Currently, right now, is there a list of, because I think, doesn't it vary by county? What do we pay in tax?
well, that was another
What does
question.
it go to pay? So in some counties, does it pay for the schools and it pay for EMS? And are there other things in other counties that you're paying for
Well, I
your
think-
property taxes?
I think
Is there any standard thing that you can only pay for through property taxes?
I've talked to some people who formerly in government, and they said what they see happening is like where I'm up in Ashtabula, and then we've got Geauga County and Lake. Lake and Geauga are far more expensive to live in than Ashtabula, and that's one of the reasons I moved to Ashtabula is because I didn't want to pay that. But he said, if you notice that all the taxes are starting to get similar in all the counties.
Sure.
They're moving to that
Once they
direction.
find out that they can squeeze it out of one county, they're gonna squeeze it out of, government, they work that way.
Well, if
They're
they
saying,
see,
look what they're doing.
and you're in real estate, so you know this better than us, but you see 5,000 people, like you were talking about, was it Warren County? Move into a different county because the tax rates are different. Well, we can't have that happen. We're gonna have to change the tax rates so that we keep the people here.
Right.
And so, what would you say to them about a sales tax like that opposed to pay for the services?
Well,
Or-
I
Go
think
ahead.
it's interesting because, what happens is that we're in this stage of where it's fear mongering, right?
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
they're going to throw the schools are going to close, the children are going to be left
No
homeless,
police.
there's not going to be any police. Okay, first of all, it's not realistic. If that's how poorly your budget is and you have not accounted for some adjustments, then shame on you, right? But the more interesting thing I think I would point out here is that with all of this going on, the one thing that Governor DeWine did vote for and pass through is a change to our income tax. So it changed for the services to decrease it from the 3.5% that it is to eventually get down to 2.75. So it's going to be done incrementally. So right now it's going to go from 3.5 to 3.125. And then the next year, 2026, it'll go down, or 2027, it'll go down to that 2.75. So they are clearly not hurting for income tax money,
Right.
or he would not have just reduced that.
Is there a fairer way to tax to get services provided? As an example, people that are employed, people that are younger that are making more money than, let's say, people on a fixed income that's retired, wouldn't it be better to use the income tax to pay the majority of the taxes that we need to operate services in the counties and the cities than, for instance, a property
Sales.
tax, which can be detrimental to homeowners, especially when they're no longer making 6 figures a year in order to be able to, isn't it better to look at income tax to pay more of these things?
Well, my true honest opinion about this is that it's going to take a hybrid of all of the things. There is not one easy answer, but it should be a combination of all of that. And I think that a consumption use is something that most of us are absolutely
Sure.
in a line with, right?
So sales tax.
Sales tax, I buy this, I sell this, I'm going to pay a
You buy
tax.
Mercedes, you pay more tax than if you have
Correct.
a Ford Focus like me.
Correct. Well, and that's just it, right? But it also is that we have taxes that are being collected. I'm a business owner and I'm a homeowner, and I'm being taxed on schools and all of these services twice over.
Sure.
Right.
So at least give me break on my home where I live, right? Give me some break. But the bigger picture is that the new businesses and the new developments that come in, they get all the tax breaks. They get these special incentives.
Right.
Well, that's ass backwards.
Yeah.
Because they're getting money in order to do this, right? But they're going to make the money off of what they're doing. So it doesn't make sense to give them the benefit of not charging them taxes. They will still build the houses if you charge them taxes on it.
They're not going anywhere.
But why give them the tax break and then your people in the community suffer? So if you took those special interest taxes, those incentives that you give there, and instead of 10-year tax break, you could make it a 5-year tax break and give the other 5-year benefit to your homeowners that are in that community that are now going to be charged more because now the building across the street is more expensive.
Yeah. Well,
And the schools suffer a lot because
schools
of these tax
suffer.
breaks that they give,
Yeah.
construction people that are wanting to come in.
It's
I
hurt
understand
schools
we need
tremendously.
homes and we need communities built and things like that. That brings in more people, that brings in more tax. So like you say, I think it's going to have to be a hybrid where some people are going to have to give up
Yeah.
these benefits that they're getting, and they can't just expect to get everything.
Well, and here's the thing, the homestead exemption is if you're at a certain age and you have a certain income. It's not across the board. So let's be clear about that. Not everybody gets that.
Right.
So even though I'm a homeowner and it's my primary residence, I don't get that benefit, right? So I've already paid into this system 20, 30 years before I may be qualified to get it. Well, that seems like you should be doing something more for me.
Right.
Because you probably have put that money in the bank and are collecting compounding interest. So again, I come back to, if you want us to have a real conversation, then you need to be giving us the real numbers. And you need to be transparent about that, because I can't expect you to set budget for my household if you don't know what I'm dealing with.
right.
But you're expecting us to pay for your budget and we don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it means
Yeah,
that
it
you
makes-
have to have some transparency.
True. And, the consumption tax too, which some people don't think about, is big box items. My brother, who used to be a wholesale car purchaser, he'd go to Detroit, he'd go wherever he could to get the best deal. Well, that will happen here. If somebody from Michigan comes to Sandusky to buy a boat, say, well, that tax is going to be paid into, a consumption tax here in the state of Ohio. So it's not going to just be the homeowners or the residents of Ohio. It's anybody that's doing business in the state of Ohio is going to be contributing to that tax.
And here's an idea that was a younger person shared with me yesterday. And they said, I don't really understand why all of this is the issue. We passed and we legalized marijuana. If they would tax just the use and sale of that product, they would have more money than they would know what to do with. So I would call out Governor DeWine, I would call out our legislators, and while this, regardless of how your personal feelings are for marijuana use, the fact that it is there, the fact that it is legal, if they were selling it and earning income tax off of that, or property tax variation, they would be able to fund all of these programs that they say they need the money for. So
That goes
just
for a
think
lot
outside of the box.
Like gambling.
Yes.
Like there's all kinds of, the schools were supposed to be supported
Funded by the lottery.
The lottery.
Casinos and the lotteries.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, once again, are we seeing that money?
No.
Where's the accountability? Where's the
That's it.
transparency? Where does the money actually go to?
Right.
That's it.
Because
So
people keep asking that.
that's the workaround. So when they voted and they presented it to us that lottery will help save our schools, that'll give funds to our school, what did Ohio do? Ohio says, okay, well, if they're getting all that money, then we'll take our portion of that money and we'll go elsewhere with it. And we'll do these other projects. So, well, that wasn't what we voted on. We still felt like there was money coming from the state to support our schools, but now you pulled your money, which means, is the lottery money enough? Well, it should be, but we don't see that accountability.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely a problem because, they'll throw taxes on tobacco and alcohol, always have. Marijuana should not be treated any differently. They should be in the same category with that, in my opinion. Well, Tammy, Joe, do you have any questions for Tammy?
You've been awfully quiet.
Yeah.
I'm a good listener.
Shows the moral support.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I can't, pretty much covered everything that I had. I would definitely, I'm all for about getting this done, and whatever I can do, I want to help. And I live in Highland County, and then I do have a lot of cousins there I can go to. I could probably get some petitions over to them and get them signed, so I could probably get a lot of signatures that way. And then if I can work this area as well, even though I don't live here, this is where.
Yeah, and so as the collector, you don't have to live where you're collecting the signatures from. Each county will have a designated sheet, so you can't put a Montgomery County person on with a Warren County person. What the offer is that I have made is that I do it by appointment because my office hours, I'm there a lot of the time. Evenings, weekends, whatever. If somebody needs to get to me, we'll find the time to make that happen. If they physically can't come to me, I'm willing to go to people that I can within reason. If we wanted to say we're going to do signing in Wilmington and we meet at one of the local places that allow us to come in there, I can meet you and everybody can come through and we can sign it. So please feel free to reach out. The other thing, and this is very important, the other thing that I am going to encourage absolutely everybody to do is flood our counties with disputes on our property taxes. So come January 1st, when the county opens their window to where people can file a dispute, I will help you complete the forms, give you the information that you need in order to do that. Just like Lucas County, if 7,000 people could submit for a dispute and they actually work through it, I think if we apply that type of pressure, we're not letting our foot off the gas. We're going to submit for this petition and we're going to file those disputes because it's no longer just free range in our pockets.
Right. That's good advice. Now, that was one of the things. I've had several people up in my area, and I know it's way up in Northeast Ohio, who've asked, can we get her to come, if like the young Republicans, they said, can we get her to come up and speak? I said, well, I can't speak for her. And I know right here in Wilmington, there's another gentleman who does a Facebook Live, said, can I get her on my Facebook Live? So your availability, I think you described that a little bit, as you'll help us out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a matter of advocacy and making sure people have the information that they need. I am not an accountant, I'm not a legal person, right? But I've got professional experience in this, and I do understand, and I'm in it with you. I absolutely feel the pressure.
Sure.
My property taxes are now $7,200, and it's like unbelievable that it's gone from $1,900 to $7,200,
right.
And I don't have any difference in my house. I update things, I do things, but there's no difference in the land. I haven't amassed anything more to it, so that doesn't feel reasonable. Wow, that sounds like an open, which is the other interesting point. So real estate sales, you know, we're in this business, we understand, and we know what prices have appreciated. Appreciation of prices over the period of time, we talk between a 5 to 8% appreciation. Just to give perspective here as we wrap this up, 5% to 8% appreciation on your value of your home. Why am I looking at a 43% property tax increase? Those two numbers don't jive. The system is broken.
Well, I moved up to Ashtabula in 2018, and since that point, on appraisals, my houses went up $60,000. So, and that's how they're doing it. That's how they're getting more money out of the property taxes. You're just going to keep on jacking up the value of your home.
Just reappraising it at a higher rate.
Exactly.
Right, but it's the compounding interest that keeps happening then, is that it never goes back, it never adjusts.
Oh, they're not going to give you any money once they have their hand in their pocket. They're going to keep taking.
Yep,
Well,
for sure.
Well, that might be where the attorney conversation comes in to say, hey, if you've overcharged us, then rightly you need to give us our money back.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's enough attorneys out there always looking for some kind of class action suit, so I'm sure somebody wants to take this up, let us know. One thing I did want to show before we close this episode is Tammy talked about the counties, okay, and I have a bunch of blank ones here. You need to fill this out. So this would be Clinton County filled out, and on each one of these pages, you have to fill out that county. Okay, and and they also give you a demo petition so you can see how to fill it out. So, you know, it's not hard to do. Like I say, you would just get the people around you to sign it. you could probably get 100 signatures very easily.
Yeah.
And if everybody did that, this would snowball very quickly too.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, Tammy Murphy, thank you for being on the Razor's Edge today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Alan.
And if we can help you in any way, please let us know because we'll continue to promote you.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.